Hong Kong, one of the significant cities in Asia, home for 7.5 million inhabitants from different nationalities, and has been a home to thousands of overseas workers, many of whom are our very own. It is a densely populated area. For them, starting a church to cater to their spiritual needs was definitely a very challenging venture, especially considering the financial and procedural matters with regards to establishing a church in this booming colony. For a while, they have been attending the Agape Christian Fellowship, but the desire to start a Wesleyan fellowship never dwindled. So in September 1994, a small group of Wesleyan OFWs finally made the first giant step and organized their own worship group here in Hong Kong. The first service was held at Victoria Park. With much prayer and pulling together their resources, they were able to raise faithfully the needed amount to rent a flat that did not only serve as their center of worship, but a place to unwind on weekends and a place to reunite with and encourage one another after grueling days of hard labor. Thankfully, the organization was registered on the same month with the Hong Kong Society's office, police headquarters in Wan Chai. To the Department of World Missions in the Philippines, several pastors came occasionally to minister and serve as missionaries to the fellowship. Among them were Reverend and Mrs. Victorioso Oximas, Pastora Crescencia Sambawa, Reverend Helen Paliwen, the Reverend Charles Ampagi, and Reverend Mrs. Josiah Dugarin. The Lord has been very faithful to the fellowship, and over the years, more and more were added as each member reached out to others. One very significant step toward the growth of the fellowship was the introduction of a Center for Women by World Hope International. The center was envisioned to be a place of refuge to OFWs whose contracts were prematurely terminated by their employers. It was not only a haven during their troubled days or months, but a place to know the Bible and God's will more. For several years, Reverend Josiah Gagrin supervised the center along with his wife, Lydia. Over the course of more than 2 decades, the fellowship has moved from one flat to another, several times until they last settled here in Sheung Wan, Hong Kong Island, where we are at present. The fellowship has been blessed with 3 committed mission directors that prayed and helped the fellowship. They were Reverend Victorioso Oximas, Reverend Joel Pascua, and Reverend Silveriano Lumahan Jr. We would also like to acknowledge the willingness and availability of several of our women who acted in various capacities as administrators, preachers, Bible study group leaders, Sunday school teachers, and even music directors and treasurers. Some have gone home for good but left behind committed members to fill their shoes. At present, we have Pastora Grace De Vera, Pastora Clarina Ganado, Pastora Nanalyn Batacan, Miss Tessie Lumahan, Mrs. Lydia Rose Manis, Miss Rosemary Biligan, Pastora Lailin Tugaden, Mrs. Mercy Kilaman, Mrs. Josie Olivares, Miss Marisa Mayot, Mrs. Harriet Liwaden, and Mrs. Fe Chung. Time and time again, God has proven His faithfulness when we seek to do His will. He provided all the need of the church just when we need it most. As of today, the fellowship is still obeying the call of God to seek and to save the lost through evangelism, Bible study, baptizing believers, and never forgetting them to accept to the fold. Challenges come and go, but the church maintained its efforts to be the church with a mission and to grow for the cause of Christ, knowing and trusting that our help comes from the Lord. As He has promised in Exodus 33 verse 14, My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. For 22 years of God's presence in the church, we will continue to be an instrument in preaching the gospel, seeking the lost, and encouraging one another with the love of God. As we start another year and hopefully more years to come, we will always look up to Jesus Christ, the solid rock on which we stand. The Wesleyan Fellowship of Hong Kong, celebrating God's presence for 22 years.